Welcome to this training presentation presented by Recreational Aviation Australia, looking at runway loss of control events. Here's some examples of events where aircraft have lost control in either the landing or takeoff phase of flight. Typical reports we get from pilots regarding these incidents are a gust of wind got me, unexpected sink on final, the aircraft didn't respond to my inputs, or the wind suddenly dropped, the ground was soft, or the nose wheel collapsed as I landed. These are just some of the explanations that are provided into the seemingly mysterious acts that result in runway loss of control events, or as we sometimes say, losing it on landing, and sometimes on takeoff. Let's have a look at the real deal and see how this actually transpired to this young pilot as he lands his jamboree. Seemingly normal landing, lack of directional control, overcorrection, and we've just had a minor but recovered runway loss of control event. Here's another one. This sequence happened on the very next circuit. Poor directional control, trying to use ailerons, nose wheel not straight. Next thing, we're going gardening. So let's have a look at poor control on takeoff. First of all, we need to establish the runway centre line. As we lift off, slipstream effect takes over. If it's not addressed, the aircraft's nose will yaw left, clearly seen in this diagram. Recovered using rudder as the correct control, maintaining wings level, allows us to re-establish a stabilised takeoff. It's important to establish a stabilised climb with an appropriate reference attitude and airspeed on climb out. As we move into the undisturbed air, we can allow the aircraft to track centreline. Now let's have a look at an early rotation at low airspeed, where the control effectiveness is substantially reduced. Pilot tries to get the aircraft in the air too early, we've got limited roll control, and we're very much vulnerable to the ability to maintain directional control. Now let's have a look at another situation. Pretty normal, this one, where a pilot can come in too fast and be chasing the aiming point, particularly when they're too high. You'll see that observed from the high airspeed indication in this scenario. As we approach, everything looks normal. Perhaps the attitude reference hasn't been clearly identified, and certainly the airspeed is still at least 10 to 15 knots over approach speed in this case. As a result, the pilot's eye view, he sees the ground rushing up much faster than normal. He hasn't changed his focal point, and he develops ground rush, or that feeling of losing height and the ground rushing up very quickly. Clearly his aiming point hasn't been re-referenced. As a result, he balloons, he overreacts due to the higher control responsiveness of the controls here, and now sets about a pilot-induced oscillation, where he's chasing the aircraft. Clearly we need to apply full power and conduct a missed approach. Let's look at another situation here now that can result in a runway loss of control event, where the pilot doesn't manage the aileron and the rudder effectively, trying to basically use the aircraft to roll back to centreline. As a result, secondary yaw takes over, and the pilot is again chasing the aircraft in roll and yaw, resulting in an unstabilised approach. Looks messy, doesn't it? The ability to focus on the landing is very limited when we're trying to manage the aircraft in all three axes. So the key is, again, if you're in doubt, conduct a missed approach and try not to over control with the ailerons. They've got limited effectiveness in the approach phase. Here's a situation where, for example, for demonstration purposes, the aircraft could have had a crosswind from the right. The pilot's trying to correct it by making roll adjustments to get the aircraft back on centreline, but as a result, he hasn't protected the interwind wing. The aircraft is now exposed to the crosswind. It's drifting left of centreline. The right wing has raised, and of course, this is the classic "a gust of wind got me," and we run off the runway. Let's have a look at another type of incident that can occur. This is where we've failed to maintain directional control lining up on the runway. I must point out at this time that most of the exercises we're demonstrating were done on the grass to the left of the bitumen runway, simply to protect the aircraft while we were actually doing these unusual demonstrations. So here we are, not tracking straight down the runway. In this instance, the pilot has failed to correct secondary roll created from yawing the aircraft, exposing the right wing to any crosswind, again resulting in a potential loss of control event. So the key here on any approach is that we try to keep the wings level with ailerons, but maintain our directional control with rudder, changing our focal point as we move into the flare towards the end of the runway. If we don't do this effectively, we can actually bounce the aircraft. And bouncing the aircraft's got energy and it will become airborne again. We are now in an energy state where it's deteriorating and we can stall very easily. The key is to go round and make that decision to apply power, manage the yaw created from the slipstream effect, and climb out and just go again. The last one we want to have a look at is a side step. This is a typical manoeuvre that's done for short field landings. Side slips are fine, but we need to make sure we actually re-establish directional control late in the landing phase, and always land on the main wheels first. We don't want to see the nose wheel touching down before or even at the same time as the main wheels. We need to continue to bleed out that energy. So let's just have a look at a bit of a wrap up of the things that we've covered in the training video. Have a stabilised approach. Know how your controls change with lower airflow. Manage the aircraft with the correct control inputs. Don't try to rescue a bad landing. Go around. Understand the conditions and the effects that will have on the approach, and land on the main wheels only. Finally, be familiar with the aircraft type and practice and be current. Stay safe, have fun, continue to learn. Thanks for watching this training presentation from RAAus.